He could. 2018 is very close at hand. He's got to deliver on his promises, which he's begun, and he has to make people feel less threatened. I've asked a number of people, and I wrote a column for the Washington Post this weekend about my friends Mike and Debbie, who are just genuinely in a knot. They're center-left people, center-right people. They're a consultant's dream. They're not ideological. They're successful parents and business people, and Donald Trump has them in a knot. 500,000 people on the Mall in Washington is an extraordinary event that we will tell our grandchildren, and our grandchildren will be talking about like they talked about the 1963 march or the mobilization against the war.
So women on the move.
Women on the move, the Tea Party of the left forming. So what does the President Trump do? I hope respond with generosity in the key of we and direct his infrastructure into the underprivileged communities. Deliver real health care, not paper, but build clinics and dental chairs, to do things for people who are left behind. That was his major chord.
Do you think they have at hand a replace model?
Yes, Tom Price does. Now, there are many models. Secretary Price, soon to be Secretary Price, is a great believer in the one national market and a great believer in taking down artificial barriers and especially reducing the procedures covered benefits prospect in order to drive it down. My last job in government was to administer the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program at OPM, and we had one packet for every federal employee in the D.C. area with 600 options. That's what we need, Charlie. That's what Tom Price believes in.
Talk to me about the forming of Donald Trump's ideas. I mean, is he a man who wanted to be president, set out to be president, was influenced by people who said to him, you need to figure out a way to appeal to the right and the alt-right in American politics. And one way to do that is the birther issue, because it'll get you a lot of attention. And then build on that by talking about building a wall. Did he do that as a part of political strategy? Or was Donald Trump someone who really had a sense of what was at the heart of the American angst about government?
I think it's the latter. Now, all of my experience with President Trump is on the record except for 2 conversations. 15 extended interviews, 4 debates, but 2 off-the-record conversations that weren't that long. So I don't know his intellectual genesis. But in those 15 on-the-record conversations, I found him to be nimble and curious, open to ideas. One of my conversations, I have 5 suggestions for you, and he wrote them all down. He took them, and he was listening. Another of those conversations was the Kurds mix-up, and he doesn't like to be embarrassed. And I don't like gotcha questions, neither do you. I didn't intend it, but it was an embarrassing moment. And we had to get past that, and we did. In the end, we get along just fine for a journalist, and I've got my Trump tattoos to prove it, but this is the business we've chosen, right? This is what we chose to do. Intellectually, I don't think he's a reader. I think he's a listener. I believe he brings people in.
No, he's a television guy.
Yeah, well, my counterfactual on that is the best thing I know about Donald Trump is that stymied in his attempt to recruit Mitt Romney for reasons which I believe were political, not personal. He turned to a man he did not know, Robert, one of the most respected people in America, and he said, what do you think? And Robert Gates said, I think you ought to talk to Rex Tillerson. And Donald Trump not only followed up on it, he picked Tillerson, which shows to me an enormous capacity to take good advice from people that he respects. That's a very hopeful thought.
Well, he might have done that with General Mattis talking about torture as well.
I agree. And so if he's a listener, and if he put good people in the room, all will be well.
And how do you lay that against 2 things? One, the thing that seems to come to the surface most often in terms of his sensitivity, any question of legitimacy, which he in his own mind has.
John Meacham's biography.
Or B, the sense that he can't let go of the feeling that he thinks the media was unfair. I mean, I think he genuinely believes that, but he can't let go of it.
Well, I worked for RN, Richard Nixon, for a long time, who also had that feeling. Of course. And he...
And lots of others do.
And Nixon's was justified, because they were out to get him from his forward. Nevertheless, you got to get over it.
Someone once talked about it.
But Nixon stopped watching TV.
To be paranoid about.
But he stopped watching TV, and that was the answer. Don't watch TV. President Trump loves TV, and that's a good source of information, and it's a different kind of TV
he says
now.
It's a sort of, the Washington Post has got a thing about how, he gets up in the morning, but he doesn't have, it's not computers, it's not like, he tweets, but it's not because he sits there with his own device, according to the Washington Post.
I read that story. He watches morning show.
He watches television in the morning.
Yeah, all of it. He watches you in the morning. And so if that information, you guys have a responsibility.
During the campaign, he said he learned a lot by watching all the sides we had on the Iran nuclear debate.
Did you ever hear his UN testimony about the building of the UN? He was a master. Jeff Sessions called him in to testify on whether or not the United States ought to pay for the remodeling of the UN. And he was in command of every detail because he's a builder. I've known a lot of builders. I've represented him for years. I think he is a builder. And Senator Corker agrees with me. He's another developer. What's on my critical path today? Help me get to that end result. I will bring them in, I will talk to them, I will act on their advice. That's Donald Trump. Not an intellectual, not President Obama, a law professor, but very much a builder of buildings that are tall and strong and very, very complex.
Narcissism doesn't, you would say that goes with the territory, and in fact, if you don't have it, you will never be president?
The latter is certainly true. I started to mention John Meacham and Andrew Jackson. He strikes me as very Jacksonian in his thunders, in his volubility. And Jackson changed the politics of the country like Trump is changing the politics of the country by sheer force of will after a controversial election. So that doesn't worry me. The Constitution's very strong, very strong.
So Donald Trump, in your judgment, has the opportunity to transform the country probably as much as anybody since Ronald Reagan?
Well, President Obama had the biggest opportunity.
Because of the economic disaster he inherited.
And if he had moved only slightly to the middle, we would have been in the wilderness. I'm a Republican for a decade or two or three. He could have done it, but he moved to the left instead. If Donald Trump can drag the Republicans to the center on infrastructure, if he can be dragged to the center on immigration reform, Democrats are in the left-wing wilderness for a generation.
You mentioned Bob Gates. Bob Gates has been in here a lot at this table, and we have had 30 conversations.
Wow.
And he says the most important quality for a president is temperament. Temperament.
Oh, someone said of FDR, you'll probably remember, first class temperament, second class intellect.
That's right.
And so temperament is, FDR was joyous in the job. And I would like to see, Donald Trump has been on the show sometimes, he's been joyful. I think
it was Oliver Wendell Holmes, but I may be wrong.
I think that's correct. And I was thinking the dating of that was off a little bit, but no, you're right, that's who I thought it was too. If you've got I talk about the key of we. I hope he gets to like being president. I hope he gets to, I wonder about the first disaster which will come, whether it is a Newtown, whether it is an Orlando, how he will lead the country through that.
But you changed your mind about the speech. Any first reaction was it's grim, it's dark, it's angry. And after reading it, you said you came to like it more.
It's growing on me, and I'll tell you why. The Academy Awards came out today. The best movie in America is Moonlight. And I think it's the best movie in America because it takes a person like me who is privileged
a fabulous movie.
To a place I've never been. He was talking about that America. He was talking about places in America which are hellish to live in which it's very difficult to be an 8-year-old, whatever your color, your race, your orientation. And he was speaking very true things about some difficult places in the country. Now he has to go and do something about it. And so the speech is growing on me, as was his commitment to go after radical Islamic terrorism, which is the greatest threat to order in the world.
In an interesting way, he seems to have also come to the idea that he very important, very interestingly says, there is a movement. I didn't create the movement. I simply saw the movement, and now I'm a voice for the movement. He says that to the people he talks to.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is Brexit. Part of that came out of Brexit. I mean, he was very impressed by what happened in Brexit. Mm-hmm. And it gave him, I think, some real sense that he could win this thing.
And your muscle memory, he won and he won and he won. And I thought I was going home at 10 o'clock on election night. I was as wrong as everybody else. If we were like the NFL, all of media would be in the concussion protocol still because we were so shocked by what happened on November the 8th. He saw things we did not see, we being the media.
What do you think he saw?
The crowds, and I dismissed them. He went to Vienna,
Everybody
Ohio.
dismissed him because people would say, look, I mean, I saw Michael Dukakis, you know, with a...
And Red Rock, Mitt Romney had a lot of people at Red Rock, but he went to Vienna, Ohio, which is in Mahoning Valley, and there were thousands of people there that they never come out for a Republican. That's a Democrat. So crowds in Democratic heartland turned out to see Donald Trump. That's what I missed, because I dismiss crowds because I'm a professional.
Who's the pragmatist? Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Donald Trump?
Richard Nixon was the most pragmatic. He signed the Environmental Protection, the National Environmental Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. He didn't know it was in him. He told me that. I'm an endangered species lawyer. I said, why did you sign this, Mr. President? He said, it seemed like a good idea at the time. He didn't care. John Whitaker, Deputy Secretary of the Interior, said he didn't know it was in that stuff. He was playing a great game, and he didn't care about domestic policy. Pragmatic all the way.
Hugh Hewitt, the conservative playbook for a lasting GOP majority, he calls it the fourth way. Thank you.